Ann Carl for county recorder, and she's eminently qualified to run for the office of recorder. Her professional experience includes as a civil and criminal deputy for the Cochise County Attorney. She not only prosecuted cases, but also advised the county recorder, elections, and many other county departments. As a sole practitioner, she diligently and honorably represented public school, municipality, private business, and individual clients in all legal manners. In 2019, the Arizona Bar Foundation named her a top 50 pro bono attorney. As a teacher, speaker, and trainer in ethics and public law, as an administrative law judge, a law clerk, a People's Law Center, Haywood Burns Fellow, and as a State Bar CLE committee member, and continues to earn others' trust as a nonprofit grant recipient and administrator, most recently for Old Bisbee Firewise, a nonprofit that Ann and her husband, Al Anderson, co-founded. Ann again followed through, putting her care for community into action as a private and commercial property manager, and continues to grow in love for Cochise County while increasing the skills necessary for delivering kind, consistent, functional government services. Ann's education includes Juris Doctorate law degree from the University of Arizona, master's education degree from the University of Arizona, Bachelor of Arts degree from Union College in Schenectady, New York, Phi Beta Kappa, law and undergraduate degrees awarded with honor. And she also has past certifications in Arizona election law. Ms. Carl's campaign can be contacted through her website, carlforcochise.com. Let's give her a warm welcome to our wonderful program.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that introduction. I think I'm unmuted. You really covered the landscape there. And I guess I am very used to being engaged in a conversational style with people on the campaign trail. So if anyone wants to jump in and ask questions, I'm more than happy to answer them as best I can. I was looking at the website for those you've interviewed in the recent past and saw Brian Flagg there. And anyway, it's just a real honor to be in the group of all the other people that you've interviewed because, well, for example, Brian, I know from Casa Maria, when I was a law student, I worked with others to make sure that there was a table at Casa Maria offering legal advice on a regular basis to those clients. And Brian and I went way back into well, my past in Tucson when I was a community organizer and teacher and trainer, and before I went to law school. So I was involved with a lot of different organizations working on social justice issues, working on environmental issues, issues supporting our democratic process. And I think all of that is really at stake right now in Cochise County and throughout the state and country, of course. We have in Cochise County a situation. Mm-hmm. And if you've been following it, you know that we have 3 board of supervisors down here. And the majority of them are, frankly, on a regular basis, doing things that divide us and that do not enhance our democracy or protect our democracy. And our current recorder down here, David Stevens, who formerly was at the state legislature, has been in some ways the ringleader of pursuing ways to divide us as a community. And we have a beautiful community down here. We are not as big as Cochise County, for sure. We're bigger than the state of Connecticut by over 1,000 square miles. And if you ask my Honda Civic, which is an old car, you know that I've been traveling to get to different pockets throughout our community. And we have wonderful people down here and wonderful landscapes. I'm going to be in Dragoon on Thursday giving a presentation, and you'll know Dragoon from probably driving through Texas Canyon with the big boulders, right? And it's just a fantastic history locally there. There was the staging ground for World War II officers from Japan, prisoners of war during World War II there, and just a lot of Hollywood elites would stay there in Dragoon. But we have just so many small communities that have wonderful people, wonderful history, and we all need protection for our democratic way of life here in Cochise County. And so one of the reasons I'm wearing not just my own button, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm also wearing a button for Teresa Walsh. She's a retired colonel from the intelligence. She has an intelligence background, retired colonel from the Army. And after leaving the Pentagon, she came here back to Cochise County, and she was helping veterans in Ann Kirkpatrick's office. She's running in Tom Crosby's district, and I was active in the recall effort of Tom Crosby. He's our Board of Supervisors District 1 representative. And so I'm in my travels throughout the county, I'm not just promoting my campaign, but urging people, please, to talk with our friends in Tom Crosby's district, especially, so that we can replace him with someone who knows what they're doing, who respects the rule of law, who cares about our community. And really, that's the bottom line. In all of my the different things that were just read off, I think my best experience comes from having been a waitress through school. I waitressed a lot, and I still have my apron and wear it in parades full of, I love the deep pockets in parades because I can fill it with my card and swag. I have these little Post-its. I don't know if you can see them, but it has my website on them. And so that's what I hand out instead of candy. But I'm able to, use my experience as a waitress and my love for serving people to promote what I would do as a county recorder, because I think it's important that we get the services we pay for. And right now we're getting a lot of drama. I realize I'm jumping around a lot instead of just talking about myself. But our current recorder has pursued a number of things that have appeared in the news, and I don't know how much you've been following the news of Cochise County, but just for example, we've had about 9 lawsuits in as many months, and we end up having to pay for both sides in some of them because of incompetence or extremism. And so I market myself, and I am a very middle of the road Democrat. I oppose extremism on the left and the right. I just want our services restored for this particular office. I want us to have an office that functions, for everyone who's qualified to vote or everyone who wants to record something. And by the way, I'm going to step back a little bit and just tell you what the recorder does, because sometimes people don't know what a recorder is supposed to do. And especially in this county where we've had a recorder whose job responsibilities were greatly expanded in the elections arena, it's important to know what the recorder does in most counties. So mainly there are two functions. One of them has to do with recording important community documents, some of them just for posterity, and some of them because they have greater legal weight when they're recorded with a date stamp on them from the recorder's office. And so oftentimes that the recorder records documents pertaining to property, so deeds, trusts, liens, loans, all sorts of things. But anything can be recorded so long as the person is willing to pay for it. And it's important for combating fraud. It's important for posterity. If your great grandkids come later on, maybe they're interested in the history of what you were up to, and if there are things that were recorded, it makes it a whole lot easier for them to do research. A lot of people from area museums come and use the recorder's office for that purpose too. So it's not ancestry.com. Find everything about their past, but it's certainly the recorder's office provides a service for our community identity now and in the future, and certainly about our past community identity. Then the other part of the recorder's office, or main part of the recorder's office, has to do with elections. That's voter registrations, making sure that the voter rolls are regularly cleaned up. Oftentimes we have a lot of mail-in ballots going to a single address. And so what's the problem there? It's costly to have these mail-in ballots, which are over $5 or maybe around $5 each, to be going to some place where possibly there's not a person who's actually registered to vote at that address. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes energy, and it takes money too, to clean up the voter rolls. And by clean up the voter rolls, I mean putting people on the inactive status as opposed to the active status. So you're not destroying a name, you're just putting them on the inactive status. And that takes a number of mailings, it takes follow-up, and the recorder really has to be present and active, working hard to do that. And currently we have a recorder who sometimes doesn't show up to the office. He just, he's doing other things. So I'm a believer in working hard. I've always, when I was a kid, even before I was old enough to have my own paper route, I helped my older siblings with their paper routes, and have always loved to work and willing to follow up with people and do as much as I can to make sure that everyone feels confidence in that process of the voter rolls. Additionally, the recorder has a hand in, oversees mail-in ballots, election, early voting, conditional, provisional ballots, all of those things have to be looked at, and comparisons have to be made just to make sure that some people who are eligible to vote are voting. In the recent past, our county recorder here in Cochise County, his job responsibilities expanded because our very excellent, happened to be Republican, elections director named Lisa Mara was run off by threats, by a lawsuit done by the Board of Supervisors, who did it without even following the open meeting law rules. Their attorney just filed a lawsuit. But there was a lot of pressure on her to do something that was illegal, and that was a 100% hand count. And she refused to do that. And after that legal dispute, which she won, we as taxpayers here in Cochise County have been stuck with paying the bill. So for both sides of that legal dispute, and our liability with lawsuits so far, I think it's over $300,000. And so as a relatively poor county, I believe that Douglas is still a poor city in Arizona, and Douglas is in Cochise County. We don't need that. We don't need those expenses that are costing all of us so much. So I am someone who prefers to just kind of be behind the scenes working to help people. And all of these shenanigans have forced me out of that. And I did run for a judicial position, judge of the Superior Court down here a few years ago in 2020. And it was a three-way race. And I entered the race late. I took a look at the two candidates who were running, and I decided that it was important to have a third option. But I was a write-in candidate and only had 6 months, and I came in second. Three-way races are notoriously difficult. I think there was a maybe less than 2% divide between my finish and the first place finisher. But the point is that I dipped my toe at that time into local politics and was able to get a sense of the lay of the land. But COVID was happening then. And so all of these meetings, which really should have been in person, didn't happen. And if they happened at all, they happened over Zoom. And it was a experience for all of us at that time to get to know and become confident with it. So there was just so much learning going on. And I'm very grateful at this point in my campaign for county recorder about grateful for having that experience, because it's just given me, I think, a leg up from someone else just coming in cold to start a campaign. I'm also very grateful for my experience with the recall effort, which, even though it fell short, trying to recall Tom Crosby, who's again running for Board of Supervisors District 1, that experience gave me such insight into Board of Supervisor District 1 people who oftentimes are really just scared of putting their names out there. And I've been running an education campaign about, our county and how we only have 3 supervisors, and where the county dividing lines are. We also have an issue because we're divided by congressional districts, like Pima County, divided by congressional districts 6 and 7, and divided by legislative districts 19 and 21. And unfortunately, I live in Bisbee, and so anyway, I'm in District LD 21, but 19 needs a lot of, and the greater part of Cochise County is in LD 19. But as a candidate for a countywide office, I'm able to explain these things to people and hopefully light a fire to get people to become more active if they're active already, or a little active if they don't vote, for example. My website, which I provide on my card, has ways that people can make sure that they're registered and update their registration. And so I'm doing as much education and voter registration work as anything else. And that's important. I am still amazed at how many people in Cochise County, and I'm sure elsewhere in the country, their first question is, do you have an R or a D next to your name? And if I say a D, they won't talk to me. They will walk away oftentimes. And so I work on different ways to keep it light and continue to engage people, and if possible, to make sure that they understand that we're paying for all of these people who are so extreme in their view and won't follow the rule of law. And as Pima County residents and voters and active in politics, I'm sure you're aware that we're joined at the hip in so many ways with the success of LD19, LD21, CD6, and CD7. If our elections aren't free and fair, it will impact all of us. And right now, because of the guy I'm running against, we have someone who is our elections director, a guy named Bob Bartlesmeyer, who was hired after the guy I'm running against, David Stevens, was the acting election director. And by the way, as he was the acting election director, he weaponized that office by going after a couple that was just circulating a petition for the recall effort near the post office. And he had the wrong information about the property that they were on. He and of course he should have had the right information, right? Because he's the recorder with all of that information at his fingertips. But he called the sheriff on them, and then called the actual private property owner to report them to the private property owner and encourage that private property owner to make a complaint against this couple. And anyway, so that's when he was the acting elections director. At that time also, he hired this guy, handpicked this guy named Bob Bartlesmeyer to be our current election director. And Bob Bartlesmeyer is problematic because he lied on his application. He was not, he did not meet the application's requirements for being qualified for this department. So he didn't have a college degree. He didn't have an Arizona voter certification. He left big gaps in his application. He told the county that they couldn't contact most of his past employers. He's also got a history on social media of extremist rhetoric that's disinformation about the 2020 election winner. And it's that sort of disinformation that I'm fighting against in terms of my campaign. But let's see. I know I've been jumping around a lot. I don't know where to go at this point. But if you have questions, please jump in.
We can help you, Ann. Steve Linder has a question with his hand up.
Hi, I had the pleasure of meeting you at the Grijalva Social Security luncheon.
Yeah.
And I really thought this was a good place for you to come and express your views and let us know that you're in the game. So what I'd like to know, maybe you could help us with, is what are you up against? What's the voter registration in Cochise County of Republicans and Democrats? And also, what are the voting patterns as compared to Pima County as to how many people vote early, vote by mail, as opposed to how many people vote on the day of election? Because that tells you a lot about who's voting.
Yeah, and that's a really important question because we have almost 80% voting by mail here in Cochise County. We have about 76,000 registered voters here in Cochise County. I should say in 2020, almost 50,000 voters voted for David Stevens, who I'm running against. He was unopposed, and I know that a lot of people will, check a box if there's only one candidate, whether they know anything about that candidate or not. But I'm educating people about the importance of choosing well in that respect. In terms of the demographics of the split between Democrats, Republicans, and independents in Cochise County, we have it's almost a third, and a third, but more Republicans than Democrats, more, I believe it's more independents than Democrats too, or they're not. I need to check that again. I get confused by too many statistics all the time. But with so many voting by mail, it is a real message to all of those who are promoting with a lot of noise in Cochise County and elsewhere around Arizona, this idea of we should have a one day voting option at the polls only, strictly. That would disenfranchise my parents who are, homebound. It would disenfranchise so many based on whether they're working people, working families, and don't have time that day to get out to the polls. It would disenfranchise many, many people. So yeah, we love vote by mail. We need vote by mail. And there are so many bad ideas floating around. Right? I've heard all of them with respect to the vote by mail issue, like getting rid of that, with respect to this ballot funny paper that they tried to push in Cochise County, and we had a grant. This is a perfect illustration of how wrong our current incumbent at the county recorder's office is. We had a grant for $1 million that was written by Mark Fincham, who is very close friends and allies of David Stevens, who I'm running against. This money, which I believe came from a HAVA grant, but it went through the state, so maybe it was appropriations. I have to double check on that. But anyway, this state money of $1 million only had one applicant for the grant, David Stevens. And why was that? Well, a part of the reason is that it was written for a recorder and it pertained to getting new ballot paper. And usually in our state, the recorder's office have nothing to do with ballot paper. That's under the purview of the elections director. So this was a grant that was written for David Stevens. He was the only recorder to apply. Only a recorder was allowed to apply. or to apply, not an elections director. And it was for a pilot program to create this fancy paper that would, if you held it up to the light, you'd see blue and just kind of crazy embedded things in the paper. And this was a solution in search of a problem, because no one, to my understanding, has ever complained about the ballot paper needing these safety measures embedded in it. The other thing is there's a question about whether our machines could handle the ballot paper like that. So, another issue about this, Mark Fincham, when asked whether, how he found the specs for this particular ballot paper, he said somebody knew somebody. I don't really know. It was just somebody who knew somebody. And in fact, it was an old colleague of his, a longtime colleague of his, who is, I guess, the owner of Authentics in Texas, where Mark Fincham and David Stevens have gone a number of times, or maybe David Stevens only once. But the point is that it seems like there's been dirty dealing with respect to getting this $1 million grant that was written with the specs that only Authentics could really provide. It seems like there was a problem there with corruption or possible corruption. And fortunately, with a lot of pressure, a lot of people getting behind this effort, people have shot down that, or at least a part of that grant. Some was spent already, almost $200,000 was spent already to purchase a dandy roll, and paper for it, which would put a watermark in ballots, which we really need, because no one's ever complained about the ballot paper not being safe enough. How did I get there? Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, we have questions. Mike Bryan has questions in the chat box. Mike?
Yeah. I have several questions from the chat, but I have one of my own to lead with, and that's who's assisting you and advising you in your campaign, and what is your win number? What's your budget? Give us some details about how you're heading forward and how you plan to win this thing, and frankly, against the odds.
Oh boy, yeah. I'm very fortunate. Again, I have a wonderful communications director. So every time I'm at an event, I'll have someone take a picture, or I'll take a safe selfie of myself at the event and just text it to my friend Karen Fausenpower, she was a great behind the scenes person for the recall effort, and she has all that experience. And so she's my communications director, and also kind of fills the role of campaign manager in a sense, because she keeps me moving into thinking about other things. My husband is my treasurer for my campaign committee, and he's very good. He's he'd prefer that I be doing something else. He'd like to be retired, but he's a little older than I am, but he's extremely competent, and was a manager of a general contracting company for many years, and used to have his electrical and plumbing license, and he's very handy. Also, I have a number of people advising my campaign. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bob Karp and Pat Fleming. She's been incredible, keeping me aware of the events that I need to get to around the county. And then in addition, there are interns that Cochise County has hired that are being very helpful. One of them is based in Douglas, and we're trying to really step up with getting more people registered to vote in Douglas. But there are 3, and all of them have a focus of getting more people registered in this county. And we're getting good play with our website, and I'm trying to collect as many petition nominations online, because the gatekeeper for my nominations is David Stevens. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
But after my judicial campaign, my husband and I sat down and had a long talk, because that was largely self-funded, and we were able to do it. And we really believe that we are able to, stretch as much as we can. We did every door direct mails, which seemed to work well. We had a whole room devoted to all of those postal buckets, and counted out the number for each postal office, and made those deliveries on strategic days. So my husband is a real strategist. It's not what you do, but when you do it. And so we have a lot of plans. We have our budget broken down very clearly. We have wish lists. We'd like to get a billboard over 2 cycles, and that's expensive. And we have to reserve that in early. But anyway, so that's kind of my, I've probably overshared there, but that's kind of where we're at.
That's fine. We love oversharing, but let me just give you a small piece of advice, and that's to raise your sights. It's very, 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 very seldom that a county level office can have a statewide or national profile, and you're in the exact position to do so, because of Stevens and his plans to do hand counts and his constant attacks and election denialism, and the possibility that he could hold up the electoral count here in Arizona. You're in a perfect position to message on that, and to make sure that Arizonans know that our votes statewide are in danger as a result of this man holding this office, and as well to even go nationwide in terms of your fundraising and your messaging, because Arizona is a swing state. So Democrats all around the country would be interested in your campaign and what you have to say, especially if they're not aware of what Mr. Stevens believes and has said and is trying to do to Arizona's votes. So let me just throw that piece of advice out there for you, and move on to some of the questions that are in the chat here. Bridget wonders if you're connected at all with Arizona List and using their training and support for candidates.
Right. Arizona List, I have talked with Kathy Nichols and Claire, and wonderful organization. I'm in kind of a position of wanting to, again, be as middle of the road here in Cochise County as possible, and get across the point that I want someone in this office who will leave their own personal politics at the door, instead of bringing them into that office, which is what David Stevens is doing, which is costing us so much money. So, I personally have a connection with Arizona List, and I am so grateful for their training so far, and I intend to get training from them. In terms of using endorsement or something like that, I probably won't use their endorsement down here in Cochise County, but I appreciate Arizona List.
So we had a question from Christina who wonders if you would be aware of what would have happened if Pence had done what Trump asked him to do on January 6th regarding the electoral count. And I think as an addendum to that, what could happen in the worst case scenario in 2024 election if Mr. Stevens is overseeing that race?
Well, in terms of David Stevens overseeing the race, I mean, he is overseeing it he will be overseeing it as a recorder, but in terms of the election director, at least technically, now David Stevens has submitted his resignation in terms of the oversight of the elections director duties. So it's Bob Bartlesmeyer who's overseeing that, and there are real questions about his competency, and it's anyone's guess. It's really, I'm so thankful, Michael, that you mentioned the profile of this county in the country. I mean, we've actually had international press when the Guardian has showcased Cochise County, and the Nation has showcased Cochise County as possibly the reddest county in the country. So in terms of what would happen if if things went any which way, it's your guess is as good as mine, and I don't know. It'll be an interesting campaign season.
And we should definitely give that some thought. That's a talking point that would be of great interest to a lot of voters, especially those who have money to spend around the state.
Lee, you have your hand up.
Anne.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad the Guardian is involved, because my question has to do with media coverage in Cochise County. And I wondered if there are any is there a local newspaper or local email site, Facebook, radio station, and are they all red as can be, or as far as locally, or are they fairly measured in what they'll cover?
Well, our local newspaper for the county is the Sierra Vista Herald, and it has heretofore had a conservative bent where it's been very hard to get things published. But just recently, Matt Hickman came back to be the editor-in-chief of that paper. And Matt, if you know Debbie Hickman, she's his mother. She's a good Democrat down here in Cochise County. And Matt is a great newspaper person, very interested in sports as his first love, but he's also told us that he wants to see more balanced coverage, more publishing of our stuff. So I think it's going to get easier in that sense. They've been losing subscribers, unfortunately, like all local newspapers, and we desperately need them. They've been actually quite good on covering what's happened, like what happened when our Board of Supervisors refused to certify the election last go round, and the recall effort. They did a good job publishing. Char Poirier was writing those articles, and it was almost daily, or actually it's only published 3 times a week now, but in every single publication, the Board of Supervisors were doing something else that had to be addressed. And so fortunately, the word goes out in that sense. With respect to radio stations, if I pay for it, I'm sure that I can get some coverage there, but we do have many very conservative stations. Again, my communications person, Karen Fossenpower, is so great, and she and I are working on that, figuring all of that out, and we will take advantage of what we can. And of course, in that respect, having more of a, having more to work with will enable us to run more ads in those places.
You're saying more to work with. You mean more money, more donation?
More money. Yeah.
Okay, let us know
Yeah. Thanks.
because we're here to help.
Thank you.
Okay. Andrea, you have a question.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, Ann. It's good to see you. You talked earlier about the breakdown of party registration. Are you able to reach people who vote a lot, whether Democrat, Independent, or otherwise? And is KTAN still a country station down there? She's looking blank. It's probably been sold. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
It's all right.
KTAN.
KTAN.
KTAN. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I will look into that.
No, don't worry about it. I was just curious as to what incarnation it had taken on. But my question is about, are you reaching the people who vote a lot?
Right. I'm very lucky as a Democrat to have access to the van. And we paid the $500, which, we have paid that, and that's for the full cycle. And it's $500 well spent to have access to the Voter Action Network. I think that's what it stands for, the van list. And so we are all learning, attending. Mike Weingarten gave an excellent presentation not too long ago on the minivan, and which I've used in the past with Mike's help. And we've had Lauren Burson and others help us with phone banks when we were doing the recall effort. So we're getting more and more people engaged in figuring out the data and where to, which voters to reach out to, because it's such a spread out county. In some places, it's the voters are harder to reach. When I was doing vote curing during just after the last election in 2022, I was going to out of the way places in Tombstone, and I was sure that my car was going to get stuck in the, some of these roads aren't paved, and it's just, you just hope that you're not going to get stuck. But the Democrats that I would find in these out of the way places had no idea that there were any other Democrats at all in the the greater Tombstone area. And it was so important for us to connect one-on-one with them, and they appreciated it. And I think we're doing a service every time we knock on someone's door, especially when they're out of the way and disconnected. And it's about community, and it's about life, and helping one another. And so anyway, we appreciate the van helping us to find people and connect with them.
I lived there in 1981. I'm sorry to hear it hasn't changed very much.
Yeah.
And now I'll mute myself.
Okay.
Okay. Paul Stapleton Smith, you have a question.
Indeed, I do. And Carl, it's been hours. Lori Cinnamon, we spent the day in Sierra Vista at the Rural Summit. That's the kind of candidate this is. She shows up. And that was some serious organizing. And I'm so grateful. On behalf of LD21 and, shall we say, several other Democratic groups, I work in media. And there's a video billboard truck that we contract with. So we get discount buys, and then we run custom messaging. It's an eye catcher. Reporters can't resist it. And there is nobody on the road or in an intersection, including Cochise County, that doesn't have to stare at that video truck. Would it be something that, Karen, you might have us reach out to LD21, to our board, because we want to be terribly effective for you, because you're a warrior. And to Michael Bryan's point, and the folks we've been talking to here, this is a great group, by the way, is you can take this race. You can take it with the news cycles. It is absolutely possible. and you need all the help and support. So in that regard, when we can do, because you mentioned the billboards, Jeannie Buell and I, of course, was with us, right? We talk about billboards in key sections of rural. But if you would be so kind, and then
It's me.
be really explicit about what LD21, because of course LD21, you're one of our candidates, and I'll remind folks here, one of the most brutally gerrymandered districts. No exaggeration, right? But we have allies, and you're here. I was so delighted that DGT and you. I was like, what? This is great. So congratulations. Thank you. Consider that billboard truck, because our good friend Stevens is, I believe, an insurrectionist, right? And with Fincham, we have, I'm just saying, maybe it's not Ann Carl name on the truck, but when we point out, see, I'm saying that, but yeah, he's an insurrectionist, and that's ours to do with as we should. Yeah. But thank you, Ann Carl, and if that's useful to you, please have Karen reach out to us and Marcy and the rest of the board, and we'll see if we can put some money into your campaign, and make it go a little further, if you will, by maybe doing a buy on that truck like that.
Thank you. That would
Bless
be
you.
great.
Thank you, sister.
All right.
Hey, Mike, any other questions?
Yeah, Larry wanted to know what the Cochise County Party, Democratic Party, is helping you to do, whether you're getting support from that direction, and of course, what we here in Pima County can do to help out with your campaign, because obviously we're very concerned here in Tucson as well.
Thank you. So many of you do know Elizabeth Tyndall, who's our chair at the county. I happen to be the secretary for the County Democratic Party, but we have a good group at the county level. And my husband's the president of the Mule Mountain Democrat Club. So we're working locally with local groups on, figuring out whether we'll be doing postcards sooner than later, that sort of thing. And the county party has, stepped up, for example, by hiring these interns. We only have them for 1 week each, or 40 hours that's spread out this year, but we might we're working on raising the money in order to get them next year too, which is going to be really key. And so we have 3 interns through the county party. We also did a candidate mingle through the county party, although that happened here just down the street from where I live, and that mingle was a fundraiser for not just me, but Kirsten Engel showed up. We had representatives from the, Board of Supervisors races. And that was a fundraiser that was very successful. It was a friend raiser too. But so the county and certainly local businesses were Rod at Cafe Roca gave us the food at cost, and it was excellent food. The space was given to us for free, which was just amazing, and given to us given to the county party, I should say, for that event. But the point is that the county is doing quite a bit, and so there's that. In terms of what the greater Pima Democratic Group can do,
Give us money is an acceptable answer.
Yes, money's an acceptable answer.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at asking for money. My husband's, always saying that.
What's your campaign contribution limit?
The campaign contribution limit, has it come out yet? Because up until recently, I've been told that it hasn't been published yet, but the old published amount was 6,000 something per individual. And of course, I'm not allowed to take money from any union or any corporation. Not allowed to be a clean elections candidate. That would have been great. And not allowed to take any money from an LLC. So really, I'm mostly dependent on individuals. And I've been asking people to just, even if they could each find 10 people to donate $25, if I can find 25 people to do that, I can raise, 5,000 or 6,000. I can't remember how it works out, but I've been, I am looking to get more contribution, less than more, which is a nice way of getting people on the team. A little buy-in is just really, it makes all of us feel better. It makes me feel better. So.
Okay, Jim Hanley, you have a question.
But the question I have is that you just mentioned that you're not allowed to run as a clean elections candidate. Can you tell us why that is?
I think it's state people. People running for the legislature are allowed. My position isn't one that they allow to do clean elections.
Yeah, county officials are not eligible under state law. Just because basically it's a oversight, I think. I do have a couple other things that I wanted to mention. Number one, have you had any reach out from or to state level electeds and or the party? Because it seems to me that your race in particular would be of great interest to both Secretary of State Fontes, the governor, and Yolanda, our party chair, our state party chair. And they could really help with events and fundraising down there in Cochise County and raising awareness. So has there been any movement in that direction?
Well, we've certainly wanted to, and I need to follow up with that. I did meet Adrian Fontes at an event that we did down in Cochise County to fundraise for the county, for the recall effort, actually. But since then, and since I became a candidate, I have not personally connected with him, but that's on my list.
Excellent. For
sure. And the state party representatives, yes, that's also on my list.
And the last piece of advice, and then I'm going to shut up, is, in terms of earned media, they're in a very conservative media sphere, both the radio and the TV and everything. I think the most traction you're going to get is debating this issue of whether or not hand counts are effective, and really weaponizing that message that hand counts are ineffective, that they're inefficient, that they're expensive, they take too long, because Stevens is kind of all in on board with this idea of doing a hand count. And I think by leveraging that issue, you can really get a lot of earned media there and get a lot of attention for your race. So I'm going to
absolutely great advice.
Lori Cinnamon, who has her hand up.
Yes, Lori.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Lori.
Good to see you again. So a couple of things. I heard, Mike Bryan talk about getting more of the party involved, but I also heard you say you're trying to not make it a partisan race. So, there's a balance there. But regarding hand counts, I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask everybody, all the grocery stores in Cochise County, to do away with their cash registers?
Yeah.
And all the cashiers have a pad, and they write down the prices and add them up by hand, because that is completely what a hand count is like.
Excellent.
So I think that would be
great suggestion.
Let's have a hand count day in Cochise County and see how people like standing in line at the grocery stores, and see how good the cashiers are adding things up in their head. So hand count day in Cochise.
I love that.
Well, there's no better way to end the meeting. That was great, Lori, and we really appreciate it. And you come back anytime you like. Susie mentioned that you talked about honesty and accountability. That's a great duo to run on. So you keep up the good work, and thanks for coming today.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time.